What's up? Welcome to a new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode number 449. My name is Steve. I'm one of the co-hosts of the show, and as always, I'm joined by
Ron.
Hi, I'm Judy, and I'm taking away your kids because I have a pill problem. Or you have a pill problem.
You're a total Judy. You're a total
Damn
Judy,
it.
John.
That was a total Judy move to get the wrong pronoun in there. You have a pill problem. That's the line as spoken by Chloe Feynman in Ronald's required viewing pick.
What's new, guys? Anything new? Nothing new?
Yes.
What?
They lied to us, Jerry. They told us that 70 millimeter was only going to be available for a couple weeks. They lied to us, Jerry. And what's happening is some of the smaller theaters that present in 70 millimeter are starting to get centers, which is really cool. AFI Silver Spring. I watched Hateful Eight a couple years ago there. They just announced it's only 3 days, but 3 days of centers at 70 millimeter. Ta-da! And what's really cool is no assigned seats. So
cool.
Come as you go. Come as you go. Come
Go
as you
as you
please.
come.
Go as you come. First come, first serve. Maybe that's what I'm
That
looking
works.
for. Yeah.
I guess this first come, first serve. It's really just the old-fashioned way
Yes.
of arriving at the, like groceries is an old-fashioned word.
Yeah.
Well, like the old-fashioned experience at a movie theater, the groceries, if you will, of a movie theater, was getting there early so that you could get a good seat. Now, I am actually glad those days are over, but I can see why there's certain nostalgia for it in certain situations. But I actually love not having to sweat it and just knowing my seat is waiting there for me.
It's starting to annoy me on movies that aren't quite as big, like or like smaller theaters where you may have like 50 seats, right? And then people say they're going to sit in a seat that they've picked. They don't abide by that shit, and I find myself sometimes telling a person, E10, that's me, man. I find myself saying that more in the smaller theaters when there's, it might be like a smattering of like 15 people. And I find myself being like, I'm sorry, guy.
Have you ever been witness to a guy gets told, hey, that's my seat. He gets up, he goes and he sits somewhere else. And then somebody else comes over and says, that's my seat.
Oh, no.
And then the guy gets up. I mean, I've seen someone like have to move twice and then start walking around. But actually, when I saw Sinners, this guy came up to the woman near me and he was so weird about it that because he was telling her, he came up to a woman who was sitting there and said, I think that's my seat. And she showed him her ticket and said, no, it's not. And then he looked around confused and kind of ranted and raved and walked away.
Wow.
And she kind of gave me a look and I kind of gave her a look that I hope you have no idea what I conveyed, what a hairy 51-year-old man conveyed to this woman in a dark theater. I tried to convey a sense of I saw that too and I've got your back if this gets weird. But she may have thought, oh shit, this theater's full of creeps. But anyway, the guy walked away and I saw him walk up to someone else and say something. And then they said, no, this is my seat. And then he went and sat down somewhere else. And after a couple of minutes, got up and was like waving his hand, like in a frantic mood. And then like got up and walked up and down the aisle looking and then stopped and looked at us and then and then left. And I was like, is this going to be a problem? Like, is he going to be outside? But, he disappeared.
That's
Maybe he was a vampire.
called someone who didn't buy a ticket to that movie.
Right, but it's confusing that he would like just not sit down at one of the empty seats rather than walking up to two people who were seated to sit. Like that's where you think like, you know how like if someone breaks into your house at night and they know you're home, you know that they're crazy and it's scary. But if they think maybe you're not home, then that's a little bit more understandable and not as scary. A guy who walks up to an empty seat and sits down in it is less scary than a guy who tries to get a person who's sitting in their seat to move.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I had a moment the second time I saw Sinners. I'm gonna see it a third time, I guess, at AFI Silver Spring. I gotta say the races of the people because of the way it went down. There's a black woman that's about to sit down in their seat. She sits down, starts talking to us a lot. I don't know why she's talking to us so much. And then a guy comes and tries to get into the same seat. And she lets him have it. She's like, no, do you think because I'm going to see this movie that you're going to sit down where I'm sitting? She almost made it like, no, I'm not going to use a famous person that was involved in the civil rights movement, but she was trying to make it a moment. And it felt like, you aren't going to get in my goddamn seat, you white man. It felt like that. But turns out they had the same seat number. And somebody returned the seat at a weird time and then switched. So they printed it twice. So she did this, and it was so crazy because when she saw the ticket, she was like, "Oh, like I wish I could take back the things that I wish I."
Yeah.
I wish I could, because I got it. I was like, "Do what you got to do, man." It was like, I can't believe you would try to take my seat.
And at Sinners?
And at
I mean, come on.
Are you fucking kidding me? Ryan Coogler, a black director, it was feeling like that. I was like, holy shit. She was mad, and she just had to get this out. And she was so fucking wrong. And it felt like,
damn.
Well, she was wrong, but she was right. You know what I mean?
She was, yeah.
They were both right.
Yeah.
It's like, but also, were there empty seats he could have
I don't want to call her a broken clock, but click clock. Isn't that they're right twice a day?
Yeah, it sounds like she was more like someone who might be right, but was only wrong. Maybe she's like, did they ever say a working clock is wrong 2 times a day?
I think it's wrong. Yeah, every other but twice.
Yeah.
What is the total amount you can be on a clock?
And still be a working clock.
-2.
Yeah, right. But no, that's a weird situation because that's a technical error. That's a situation where 2 people. But I do wonder, like, were there open seats he could have sat in?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
So, and I'm asking
he moved.
you,
he moved.
He did.
He moved for sure. I mean, they realized how weird it was, and I think it was kind of my friend's fault, but that's neither here nor there. He may have been the one that returned the ticket and may have caused the
whole mix-up.
Yeah,
the ripple in the matrix.
The Tupac.
The debacle.
The Tupac.
The Tupac.
It's the wordplay today.
Also known as.
Yeah.
Just because there's 2 seats, or are we bringing Tupac into this for some reason?
He's bringing Tupac in it for no reason.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like he has to come into the conversation every couple episodes.
It has been many episodes, I think, since Tupac has been a topic. A Tupac and topic. Those are kind of right next to each other on your tongue.
Yeah. Summer of '69, you motherfuckers.
Yeah, let's get into the required viewing.
I didn't mean that. I don't know why
no, you're good.
It like that.
But pretty aggro way to get into it.
Yeah, very, very aggro. I apologize. Jillian Bell, comedian, writer, first-time director, did this movie Summer of '69, which stars Chloe Fineman, Sam Morlos, and I say Matt Cornett is a very big part of this movie as well. And it's a story of a girl that wants to 69 a guy, doesn't really understand really what that means, and kind of stumbles upon a very confident dancer on the stage in her town at a strip club, and decides she wants to hire her to kind of teach her how to 69 with this boy that she has a crush on. And shenanigans ensue. So I gotta say, real quick, I love this movie. I thought it was fun and adorable and raunchy in a cool way. You know, I miss these raunchy comedies. You know, it's like Steve talks about these things a lot. I mean, because he's one of those guys, and so are you, John. You talk about comedies quite a bit. We love a comedy that kind of hits a couple sectors, and if this feels like a movie that if it came out in the theaters, I think it would have did pretty well. It's funny. It's a little unpredictable in some ways. Some really funny appearances from some really famous people in the comedy world. And overall, just it resolved itself in a really cool way. It just felt like a story about agency and figuring it all out as a teenager. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I thought it was. I liked it too. It does feel like kind of the type of kind of hard R or I don't even know. I don't even know like language maybe content like hard R is kind of a little loose for this, but I guess it is rated R, right? I mean,
Yeah, because the penis references and there were like the dildos and
I'm
stuff.
looking for like the actual rating of it on its page. I don't even see
Oh,
one. But
It's a fairly hard R in terms of its like just like just verbal content
subject
alone.
matter. Yeah. But yeah, it's always good to see something like this. I mean, whether I'd love to see it in theaters more. Like I remember we talked recently or relatively recent about like the Jennifer Lawrence one that got the theatrical release. John and I went to the screening of that and like leaving that, it was like, wow, that was really fun to watch, like in a theater, and kind of like feel the crowd, kind of uncomfortable at times, laughing at times, feeling the proper feelings at times. But yeah, I thought this movie did a pretty good job of a lot of that stuff. I think there's a couple lulls in the film, where it kind of slows down a bit for me, but I think overall, like I love the coming of age nature, especially if it kind of sits in that R-rated comedy, teen sex comedy. Um, I'm not super familiar with Chloe Fineman, like beyond her roles in SNL. I know I recognized her voice from Big Mouth a bit as well.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I just remember
sense.
seeing her name in the credits for Big Mouth. And like,
if she's such a good
was.
Impressionist, she has such a good vocal control. I could see her being a good cartoon voice actor.
Yeah, she did like a bunch of characters on there. But yeah, I thought she was really kind of interesting and kind of sweet in a really rough kind of way, as this like kind of mentor, for Abby, but and it's kind of it's weird for me. Like sometimes I felt like watching this movie, the topic around Abby having money from being like a gaming streamer. Like that's the world. Like even like yes. Mythic Quest, it kind of broached this like with Ian's son kind of having this career as a streamer, and that was
a great episode.
Of course, yeah. But it's like, but in this story, seeing that that consumes her life so much to whatever success she has in it, that like any distraction like this, like focusing on learning about something else that she really wants to succeed in, completely pulls her out of how just momentary that attention is in like the streaming world. Like,
yeah.
She makes this promise of this money that she thought she'd have, but then realizes by focusing on my real tangible life and things I want to feel and accomplish and succeed in, all of that like online success or just that online personality that she has is completely jeopardized. I like that part of the story a lot because it really puts like her life into perspective for her, and even Santa Monica, where she is in her life and the whole conversation around her reunion and where she is in terms of a success or not. But I like these comedies that really kind of have a bit of heart to it, and they really did kind of form that friendship, that relationship throughout the film, and I kind of bought that for the most part.
I did too.
And I don't know, there were some pretty funny moments in the movie too. I watched it with Aaron, and she was laughing quite a bit, which was great. I mean, like Nicole Byer has a small role in it. Paula Pell I thought was great as Betty Spaghetti. Charlie Day pops up a moment or two, but I was dying with Paula. Like I had to explain who that was to Aaron.
Yeah.
She remembered her when I brought it up. Like she was in AP Bio, and that's who Aaron knew her from. But
she's so funny.
I love her so much. Like all the little zingers that she had.
Well, she's an interesting person who was kind of like a secret weapon as a writer, and then like has shown up as a performer and has shown that she's willing to like go the extra mile for a gag in a way that I think a lot of you wouldn't assume that person would. The person who sort of was like, I don't know, and it's like she turns what could be like old age jokes like in this movie anyway, she's older than the other stripper. She owns the club. She's from a previous generation.
Right.
They turn the jokes. It's like her energy takes what could be old age humor and turns it into more like she's a freak humor. And I think there are certain people who manage to play that. And Paula Pell is one of those people who is great. Like she was a good, I don't know how, if I know she's been on like Tina Fey related projects and stuff.
Yeah.
And she's one of those people who good to pop in for a line or something, it seems like. And that's like, it's cool to see that she's taken on larger roles in recent years. There's a little slight SNL thread in this between Paula Pell, who was a writer on SNL, and then you got Alex Moffat as DJ Don, and then you've got Chloe Fineman, obviously, from the current crew. So I don't know. There is something kind of charming about this movie. I think I would agree with you, Steve, in the sense, I don't know if the lulls is the word I would necessarily use for it, but I think there's a general kind of lengthening of the plot. Like to me, the whole moment where they sort of break up their friendship felt sort of obligatory. And I could see that coming.
Sure.
I was much more interested in the sort of ways that I felt like they could have had a more gentle disagreement about what was most important. Or maybe even just when she finds out she doesn't already have the money. I mean, I think it's a reasonable assumption. But I like what you pointed out, Steve. I don't know if I'd even quite thought about that, how like Abby, she did have a reasonable reason to think she would make that much money in a short amount of time, but not if she's then going to spend like even a week off to hang out with Santa Monica, which is again a funny name for the character. But Chloe Fineman's character, who's an exotic dancer that she sees and she's just blown away by it. And it takes some real heavy lifting to get over that kind of sweaty premise that she's going to pay her to teach her how to 69. But I think the movie is just heightened enough and just silly enough. Yeah. And we find out very quickly how inexperienced and ill-informed Abby is. And it's like it gets you over that hump of like, totally. Of like going, okay, I don't know if this concept is weird, but I'm over it once you get into the chemistry, frankly, just between the two actresses. And I do think Chloe Fineman, you were kind of getting there, Steve. It's like she manages to be like raunchy and kind of sweet. Yeah. And I think we've seen this type of role before where someone takes like, I mean, it's not a million miles away from a Nora or something like that. It's just a very broadly comic version of that same idea of like, these are like, it's a tough cookie who's in this world. And yet the movie does its best not to talk down to the dancers. They have a certain kind of moxie that again, it's like in a comedy sense, you're meant to see that like, oh, they care about each other, and even when Abby comes into the fold, they sort of care about her. And so I think I would have been fine with just they have separate goals. Abby wants to get with this boy, and Santa Monica wants to go into her reunion with her head held high. I think you could have gotten mileage out of both those things without having the sort of blow up that I think adds like 10 minutes to the movie or something, when it maybe should have been a 90 or under, like a leaner comedy, because it's got that energy and it does move pretty fast. But it takes about 26 minutes. I timed it to like to get the concept off the ground. Like it's at 26 minutes when she hires her to train her how to 69. And it just seems like you're a web savvy kid. Seems like you could watch a couple videos. You don't need someone to train you. But okay, we get over that, and it's fun to watch these characters bounce off of each other.
Right.
Yeah. It was hard for me at first. Abby's really pretty, and it was really hard for me to understand. I know that like people who are awkward socially sometimes have like bad luck, but she's not that unattractive that she wouldn't have. She's like strikingly attractive, like really curly hair, really pretty face, like good features. It's not like somebody would be like, Abby, yuck. It's like, what? Come on.
Luckily they don't really go there though. Like Max digs her from the start. I think that's a cool, very sweet element. And in fact, he turned out to be like the opposite of a toxic douche, which is what you thought he might be. Yeah. I just thought that was, and I love that the stories about him are just not what she thinks they mean. I don't know. I liked that. I think high school, there's a lot of people that you hear one thing about and you think that defines them, and then you find out, no, that might not even be true.
Yeah. I like her rethinking the memories of the girl and realizing, what she realized about her. Yeah. That's just a really cool little element to add that, kind of separates it from other stuff in a way. But yeah,
Okay. I will say one thing. I feel like Charlie Day was like a different comic energy than anyone else in the movie.
He
and
was, and I loved it.
But I see. To me, that felt a little like it was so heightened. He was a little much for me. He was a little much for me.
He called them bitches.
Well, he's definitely playing like the obvious villain from like an 80s movie or something like that.
Yeah.
Right down to the fact that they're trying to save the club. You know, like it's that. So it's like he kind of didn't quite mesh with the movie for me, but I did appreciate that that's who they brought in to play that kind of role. The sort of obvious villain who's there to get kicked in the nuts and, you know.
This movie could have been a PG-13. And then he came on the screen, he's like talking about pussies and bitches. He called them bitches so many times. You bitches better.
Well, I got to say, I even though I thought his character was a bit much for me, I did like that when he's getting thrown out. Of course, that guy has to be like, "Hey, watch the suit." You know, he's got to. Oh wait, I forgot this. I should have. Hold on, I can't believe I forgot. There you go.
Oh yeah, I love this relationship too, man.
Well, that was another funny little running gag that I just feel like
how do you eat?
Yeah, but the fact that guy like takes money from people like is or just from her, I wasn't quite clear on that. But I like the idea that he's like an amateur therapist. Here was my other option for a picture. Let's see if I've got this. There you go. That composition doesn't quite work as well. This one's better. But no, I think that like you kind of nailed it with all the different things, both of you, about like there's the coming of age piece, there's the raunchy sex comedy piece, there's the sort of sex positive in a sense sort of movie. Yeah. There's the I mean, I know that there's a lot about getting with this guy in this, but I think this is a movie that kind of if you're worried about a movie passing the Bechdel test in the sense of its spirit, I think this is a movie that's about these two women, or a girl and a woman, relating, or two women, because she can get into the club. She's 18. These two women relating to each other about stuff that's sort of mature, like that whole idea of the agency. You mentioned that you know, it's a tricky subject maybe for even an adult to even think about, to think back about yourself and your own coming of age and your own agency. And this movie does attach attach a lot of like significance to that idea of, you know, when you become active and with whom and what speed you move at and all that kind of stuff. And I think the movie threads that needle reasonably well, of seeming like it's got a nuanced concept of what an 18-year-old could and should be doing, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
And the fact that we are following one who is like what she thinks a rim job is and stuff like that. That's a little silly, but I also thought that was really funny, and it's good character comedy to have Chloe Fineman's character bouncing off of that, because she's so. I mean, at first she can't believe how lame this kid is, and then she starts to think she's cool. But it's always like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. You know, she thinks she's cool when she finds out she's got that car in the garage, and they go for a ride. And the first place she goes is to wait 2 hours at a video store, and then she sees maybe that's something that is cool in a different way. I don't know. I like the way the two characters learn to kind of accept each other.
I watch a lot of Twitch, and I do see like there might be like a woman that streams, and there will be like a moment where they're like, if you lose this job, I can give you a rim job. She's like, what's a rim job? I do see stuff like that happen, man. We're like, you're so in your bubble that you kind of don't welcome that energy into your life. Like whatever sexual, what's a golden spataki, or I'm just making things up at this point.
You're kidding? No, you're kidding. A golden spataki's not real.
Just these weird terms that kind of become present in the zeitgeist. You kind of miss those because you're so into playing online games. It's like,
I do think people can sometimes miss what some things mean and then use things in joking ways and then find out what they mean and go, oh my God, that's what that means. That thing I've been.
This is hilarious.
Like there's a I used to work for an ad agency, or a graphic design place that we kind of were an ad agency, and there was a time where we were joking around felching. I don't think anyone needs to look it up or find out, but the word felching had crossed our path, and we were always joking about it because it's a practice that's very involved and interesting, and whichever definition you follow. But we were sort of joking around about it, and this client that used to come in heard us joking about it and thought, okay, I'll be joking. And she was actually one of the jobs we were doing was through a church. Like we were designing some kind of
Oh,
church program.
no.
And she had written on something she faxed to us. This is how old the story is, faxed. But it was Jesus on the cover of like a church program. And she had drew in a word bubble that said, "I'm just a lonely felcher."
Oh my God.
And faxed us to it like that. And we, of course, this is back when people, no one complained to anybody for this kind of thing. And we were the sort of people that made those sort of jokes. So it's not like she was in any kind of trouble, but we felt bad. So we were like, someone's got to get to Becky and tell her what felching is, so she doesn't go to hell,
just talk
basically.
like that, yeah. Just using it casually in church.
Or just think it's a funny, silly word. That's what I
Yeah.
think is like, but it's that kind of thing of like, like Abby's understanding of rim job. It's just like, it's a silly thing that you might think, oh, this is totally innocuous, or I think I know what this is. And it's sometimes it's way more depraved than you may have thought. And other times it's sometimes I think some of that stuff is just made up for people to talk about it. But anyway,
sure.
that was one that really we had a moment of like, how do we tell her now? Because now she's going to know that that's what we were joking about. It was an awkward time.
That's hilarious. Who's the next pick?
Oh yeah, it's Steve's turn.
It's my turn. Yeah. I actually have one. I think it's I think in theaters still, but I think there's ways to watch it digitally, I think. And it's only because I love Josh Hartnett, but there's a movie called Fight or Flight that came out recently. Been described as Bullet Train meets John Wick on a plane kind of thing. One of those kind of high action like choreography. It's gotten great reviews. The clips I've seen from it look really fun. And yeah, I'm here for the Hartnett assance. If it's happening, I'm signed up for it. He's got a lot of cool stuff coming up in the next few years, and I think this just looks like a cool movie. Like they were him and the director. I saw them on I think it was either Seth Meyers or Jimmy Fallon. Like Josh Hartnett was on there, but the director happened to be in the audience, and he like pulled him on stage with him, and it was just like very like fun and sweet. Like they were just like genuinely promoting this movie hard, and it's a smaller film, but it's called Fight or Flight, and I think it's still in theaters. It's probably the best way to watch it if you can, but we'll talk about it next week.
Cool.
Woo!
Woohoo!
Flight.
Before we get into anything else that we've watched, because I think that's probably what we're going to mainly be talking about otherwise, I did want to ask you guys, I know Ronald, or I think it was you who said around, the Superman trailer came out this week. If you guys want to talk about that. And I also sent you guys, I don't know if you had a chance to watch it, but Brad Ingleby, his new series on HBO is coming out in the fall, I think, or late summer, called Task with Mark Ruffalo. That trailer came out today, the day we're recording. And I wanted to just mention that, or we can chat that up a bit if either of you have watched it.
I have not watched it, but I've read up on that. I feel like they started talking about it, or
it's
like they announced it like a week or something ago. And that pedigree and that cast, it's like, yes, just give it to me.
That looks totally like they're really kind of zoning in on like the whole, this is the team behind Mayor of Easttown. It's like this crime thriller miniseries type thing about an FBI agent leading a task force trying to track down this string of like drug house robberies that's happening in this Philadelphia suburb. But it's Mark Ruffalo and Martha Plimpton's in it. Tom Pelphrey is from most people know from Ozark. He was Laura Linney's brother Ben in the series. He plays the lead of the band of robbers, I guess. Owen Teague is in it. He was in Bloodlines and the It films. But yeah, it just looks, the trailer, if you can come around, check it out. It's got that vibe, of this like great crime thriller. I love Mark Ruffalo. He's obviously kind of like plays kind of this kind of beaten down man that's kind of dealing with loss, it seems, in his family. But yeah, I think it comes out in September, but the first trailer came out today and it just looks great.
So is this on HBO or Max or HBO?
Maybe by that
Max,
time it'll
or
be on. But by that time it'll be HBO Max back again, right?
it'll just be HBO again.
Oh, who knows? Maybe by
yeah.
then they'll just get rid of the Max branding. I do think eventually, I will call it. Eventually, that is what it'll be. There will be no delineation of the platform at all. Like that is such a silly thing.
I mean, what a weird thing, and like what a weird. It's almost embarrassing. It's like they waited long enough to make it seem like they tried something, but like you know that like they're going like shit. We should have just not done it. Like what was wild to me was this week I saw John Cena and James Gunn and maybe somebody else, but I saw different people like they're promoting shit and finding out like or realizing as they're promoting it, oh wait, I've got to say HBO Max now, and it's kind of like we're doing this again. You know, there's this attitude of like, oh, we're changing the name of this thing. Everyone told you that like tarnishing the HBO brand was a bad idea. And now to just go, yeah, we're trying to like what we realized was the HBO brand meant something. And it's like, yeah, everybody in the world told you that. I don't know. I guess maybe they get some juice out of just people are talking about it. And even though I hate that wisdom when people are like, hey, we're talking about it, aren't we? But there is some truth to that, I guess. I'm sure maybe investors or whatever are part of this decision that happens. But I do think that it's sort of embarrassing to try something that seems like such a, because like I've just gotten to the point where I'm like, it's on Max. When I think about all those great HBO shows and all the shows that I don't even know what they're on, is this Max? Is this whatever? Like I don't know what Hacks is technically on. Hacks is on the same app that I go to watch The Rehearsal and the Righteous Gemstones and so forth. So I think HBO, maybe because now they've got a couple of good flagship shows running again, there's this sense that brand isn't something to be thrown out. You know, I think at the time when they made that choice, it felt like we got to do something. So
yeah,
but yeah, like September on HBO or whatever they're calling it then.
Yeah, September.
Wowzer. Again. Hopefully this is it. Hopefully this is the. But you're right, Steve. That's probably going to be a time when they just fucking switch back.
We've always been HBO. What are you guys talking about?
Yeah.
So the Superman trailer.
Superman. Let's move to Superman real quick. Talk a little Superman.
I almost flipped out a goddamn window watching this trailer. I can't wait. James Gunn, bring it on.
It looks really good.
I think he's balancing. I was worried like a lot of people about how he's going to balance all these people in this thing. And I think that we're plopped down in the middle of a man that's established on some levels, established on some not established on other levels. I think to get a slice of life that's kind of in the middle of a person established a little more feels different than anything we've ever seen for a first movie of a person. You know, I feel like I know we're going to get some flashbacks. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with some flashbacks.
Right.
But
some origin stuff or some kind of throwback notion of what the origin is, at least. Right.
Like with the Batman story, how many pearls do we have to see ripped apart in an alley? You know, it's like,
right.
It's the same thing over and over. So it's cool to see that James Gunn kind of is tackling it like he would, you know, anything else that he does from a different angle. And, you know, he has this ability to give you something very familiar, which is kind of the boldness of the way that Superman felt when you'd watch the Christopher Reeves one. He just felt special. You know, you'd see him on screen, just him being in a space. It's like how you knew it was silly, and I think that's what made him cool. It's like the Emperor's New Clothes. I mean, that sounds weird, but there's something really weird about
you're right. It's like people who get too caught up in the notion of like, how does he fool people just by putting glasses on? And it's like the magic was as much. I mean, the comics obviously existed long before, but the way that Christopher Reeve performed that character and his posture and his mannerisms as Clark, and then the way he played Superman, it was like, I don't know, it's one of those little movie magic things that like an actor can do. And I think that that works. And I'm not saying this is that, but I'm saying I feel like this is paying homage to. It doesn't feel like it's doing the Superman Returns thing of like trying to remind you 100% of Christopher Reeve. But I do think that there's a taste of that feel, just that voice. I even think that like I look at Rachel Brosnahan and like she's such fantastic Lois Lane casting, and part of it is because she reminds you of Margot Kidder in the original one without seeming like they tried to create that character again. Like we know she has her own like whip smart, she can deliver dialogue. We've seen her do this stuff. The wordplay, the kind of almost screwball back and forth you get a sense of between her and Clark in the trailer, or Superman or whatever. It's like it's got that energy. And I don't know. I think that it feels like what you said. There's going to be a different angle, and there's going to be a James Gunniness to it. But also, I think the guy did his homework and gave some serious thought to like what Superman is and what those pieces are. Part of it is that the mom saying, "I cleaned your boots. I can get them for you." I mean, that's perfect Superman stuff. You know, him saying, "Hey, buddy, look up here." Like we forget that like he's not quite Peter Parker, but Superman is like he taunts the bad guys. He's not like a stiff guy. He's got a sense of humor to him, and he does. The other thing is, I've seen people complain that Superman looks like he takes a lot of shit and gets beaten up a lot in this movie. And I want to stress to those people, the point of Superman is not that he doesn't get the shit beat out of him. The point is that he gets back up because you can't kill him. But you can drop a building on the guy. He will get smushed underneath the building, but he punches his way through, and then but Superman says oof a lot in the comics. He doesn't always have the drop on people. Right. But I don't think this movie looks like it's taking it's going to be unnecessarily harsh to the character. I think James Gunn just knows that stakes are what sell these characters, and we've seen him put characters through all kinds of stuff in his superhero movies. So we know that he's not going to let Superman get off without a few bruises. But I do think this looks like a hopeful, sweet, fun movie. And I'm with you, Ronald. I like that we're getting a sense of a universe that exists and characters that are already on the margins of it. Like I don't when I look at James Gunn, I don't wonder how he's going to juggle a bunch of characters. Right. It doesn't mean he's going to nail it. I'm just saying he's proven before that he can have secondary and tertiary characters that are still fun and memorable, even if they get just a scene or a line or something like that. So so I have complete confidence that this will be entertaining. So
are we going to see the new Batman in this, you think?
I don't know. That's the kind of thing they could tease, but I don't know that there'll be a weird thing to do when we haven't even heard casting on that, really. Yeah. So,
but imagine if they could reveal it in the movie. That
would be so cool.
I mean, there's already been some crappy stuff that leaked up from the movie that probably shouldn't have, and that they really were trying to save. But I think it would be amazing if they could do a reveal in the film. That would be really cool.
Yeah, sure.
But I don't know. I feel like I'm definitely still very excited for this movie. Like, I don't know. I don't want to come off seeming cold, but like, and honestly, I think the casting and just the James Gunn of it all is really like, kind of what puts me day one through, I'm going to, there's no doubt that I'm excited for this film.
That's the selling point for you.
It is the main thing. It's James Gunn. And I think the casting is really great. I really do. I'm really happy to see David Cornswood have like a chance at something big like this. I've liked him for quite a bit. He did a really great small role in the Netflix series called The Politician. That really does a little kind of tap into the Clark Kent of his casting. But I don't know, like something. Maybe it's the a lot going on thing has me a little worried, or maybe it's the just too much pressure on this movie.
Oh yeah, definitely that.
A little worried, because it really does feel like, and I think he's kind of he's kind of proved people wrong many times, and that's why he is the main draw for me, and really in anything he does. But for James Gunn to kind of like take on what he's taken on with this DC everything basically is pretty big. It's really big, and it's concerning a little bit as a filmmaker, that he has that much oversight over the whole kind of idea, which I don't think it's a bad thing, but I just think I hope it's not something that just makes this movie I don't know, impossible to succeed.
No, no, I
Not
know exactly what you mean. Not even based on the movie itself,
right.
but
That's
just
it. I was going to just say
how well it
not on
has
whether
to
the movie's
perform.
good. Right.
How
Right.
and the sense of if it doesn't perform at that level, how much it's like, oh, the announcement the next day that
I
like,
know.
oh, James Gunn's not the guy running things anymore. These projects will be finished, but he's not the guy. You know, like
Yeah, and
it's
honestly,
it seems like a very delicate position that the studio's in and that he is in.
yeah, honestly, and like we kind of joked about it earlier with the HBO Max of it all, but like Warner Brothers and all that stuff is like they are the next day making stupid decisions, and like how many times have they had to reboot anything because they've been having a really good year so far at the box office, um, especially in the last 2 months. But I don't know. I really want it to be successful for James Gunn for like another run at some really great comic book movies and for the actors and actresses that are involved with it that I love. So I'm really hopeful, and I think the trailer is a very good trailer. It's just like it's almost everything outside of what the movie actually is like has me worried about the movie, which is bad. I think
I feel a little bit the same way, not quite as much, but a little bit the same way about Fantastic Four. As far
totally
as
the
like,
same, yeah.
as far as like, I think the trailers are selling a movie I want to see. I see
Yep.
other people reacting positively to
Yep.
it. I think Marvel might even be on a little bit of a swing up with the way people are. The hype now is a little bit more positive after Thunderbolts. So it's like. I still feel like that movie has to do a certain thing that we don't know. And it's probably hard to even account for how much has been spent developing that movie and getting it in place,
Yeah, it's
like
crazy.
And like how much does that movie have to knock it out of the park to make it seem like the experiment is still working? When for years that was not the question with those movies, even the DC side, Zack Snyder's movies were making a lot of money. So I think that like I don't know. There's a big question about that when I think the word pressure that you use, Steve, is the right word. It's like
Right.
It does feel like you don't think of these things as movies. You think of them as like these giant like bands that sold a lot of albums back in the 90s. I think were called unit shifters. It's like these movies have to be like unit shifters. They have to be like we can't get like Sinners. We see how a movie can perform nowadays when people get excited about it. And yeah, Steve, you're right. Like if you can't manufacture that, it's got to be a combination of word of mouth and excitement, and people feeling like they have to access it in the theater. And if you only get 2 weeks in the summer to really shine, it's a huge movie to like base the whole future of things on. But James Gunn has said as much. If this movie doesn't do well, then I don't think any of these plans matter.
It's true.
I'm paraphrasing, but he's more or less said that.
It's rough. I mean, I agree with you guys. But that also lends itself to the thing that I complain about every couple of weeks. Too much insider baseball talk.
Oh yeah.
I don't want to hear, if I'm not listening to a movie podcast, I don't want to hear a kid talk to me about a movie flopping or shut the fuck up, little kid. Because you read a headline on a TV show on Variety that it just feels a little like weird that
No, you're right.
everybody's having this collective talk about numbers. What about the fucking movie? Did you like Sinners? Did you like it? It's weird that every couple of days somebody would come up to me and message me like, we have a podcast, so it'd be like, hey, did you know that this? Yes, this is what we love to talk about. But I don't want to hear you talk about. Just enjoy the movie. Stop trying to fucking make it so weird. Numbers are important, sure, man, because you know that it keeps things going. But now the numbers are weird. So like, if something's 800 million, it's like a failure to some people. So it's like you got to be careful about the talk. There has to be some nuance to it, because people are saying things are flops that make 750 and shit like that. They're like, well, it's supposed to be $1 billion movie. It'll make $1 billion. The economy's different. People are buying things less. People are going to the movies less. How come they're not factoring any of that in?
Well, that's the problem. That's the problem, is that I think part of the equation is factoring that in, but the actual production of the movies
they don't
are not factoring in it. And that's my point, is that
100%.
I think it sets movies up for failure.
Yeah.
Which, yes, you don't want to be thinking about that going into a movie, but speaking for myself, I can't help think about it when I see it or read about it, because going into a movie that I feel like I'm a mark on and like I feel like I'm going to love this, it concerns me that it may not mean more of this movie because it's basically set up to fail. and we talked about this on the podcast before. Like, I think that whole production side of things, has not, and they claim to be adjusting now or in the last year, but like, are not adjusting to how they're making these films and what they're spending on these movies. There are reports that Superman cost like over $300 million.
Yeah.
There are reports that Mission Impossible 8 costs, it probably did cost over $300 million.
Yeah, I heard that.
Like, these are not numbers that should be real.
Right.
They're making incredible, both movies may end up being incredible. But it doesn't mean anything in the end if they lose money and they can't make any more of them.
Right.
Or make more like them, or the stars that would have been in the film, the stars in this movie that would have become stars if it could actually see through this franchise that James Gunn's trying to launch, if it never happens. It's a catch-22, your point though, Ron. I'm like, yeah, you don't want to, like, yeah, you go in and watch the movie. Was the movie awesome? Like, I loved it. Great. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
But like, a good example is Sinners. This is a movie that, like, opening weekend, they were kind of promoting it almost like it underperformed. And it's like, you got to give this kind of film time to find its audience. And honestly, like, even Sinners seems like a movie that they probably spent too much money on in a production budget, even though it will still make much more than they thought it would have made because of the amazing word of mouth it had.
Yeah.
But to think of what it could have been if, like, these production budgets were more realistic, again, to the other side of the equation that you're talking about, like this changed economy,
right?
In terms of what people have to spend money on and what they choose to do with it, It just makes me anxious. And I think, yes, because we talk a lot about this stuff and we know and we seek out information like this. But I also think about the person that isn't tuned into this, that will go see a movie that they loved and be like, oh, they're not making any more of them, or why don't they make more movies like that? Oh, because it made $5 million at the box office, like the R-rated rom-coms, they just don't make money in the movies anymore. So that's why they're on every streaming service that you could subscribe to.
Makes me wonder when that whole argument, and then you hear about, look, I don't know who they robbed, who they bribed to lie about it. I don't think it's a lie, but I really think that the budget for Godzilla -1 was reasonable. The fact that you see that movie is like one of the better looking movies in the past 10 years.
Yeah.
And even if you don't think it was shot for much less than a lot of these movies and made much more. So it's like, you got to figure out a balance between budget and some of it is just maybe, I don't know, man. And it's weird because people are talking with their wallets, but then they're still not listening. You'll still hear, okay, this movie failed. Damn, this company, the studio's in trouble. Then they're like, they greenlit a $300 million Christopher Nolan movie. It's like, no offense. I mean, all shot in IMAX, but you hear about things like this happening right after a movie fails. It's like, are they trying to convince people? Because they attach Christopher Nolan. Right. You're like, I'm going to go see a Christopher Nolan movie, $300 million movie, or a $20 million movie, or a $5 million. It doesn't fucking matter. I'm going to see that movie, guaranteed, especially if the whole thing's shot in IMAX. But then that creates this, like, culture around it. It's like, well, how much? $300 million. I better see it on the screen. It's like, that's what we say. I mean, it's like, I want to just watch a fucking movie, but you're like, you hear about all this context beforehand.
Yeah.
For what we do. And then it creates this like, Steve is saying a thing that I feel all the time that I'm just being dishonest about. I do get fucking scared. Even the way they were talking about Sinners made me scared. It's like, that stuff matters, but what people print matters, especially if it's from this perspective that's like downplaying a successful director. It doesn't matter what his race is. It's like, but it does matter because it's factored into every fucking headline. It's like, Sinners barely gets past its 200 million. You're just like, barely past the budget. It's like, it hasn't.
Well, I was just looking at that, and not that we were just talking about how these numbers are not that meaningful, but like two recent successful movies in terms of word of mouth. Sinners on a let's say 90 to 100 million. This is what Wikipedia is saying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Budget has made 292 million. Thunderbolts on 180 million budget, which came out a week later, has made 280 million. So for a Marvel movie, not blowing the doors off, but for a recent movie released in theaters, not bad. And also 180 million, that's a lot of money, but for a Marvel movie, that's half of what they spent on Quantumania or whatever that like was not successful in the terms of that they need it to be. So I do think there's a middle ground here. Like these are movies that like don't have to be the most successful movie in the world in order to seem successful. I'm sure with both of those movies, the marketing budget is maybe again the budget. That seems to be the conventional wisdom that you hear. But I also hear that number sometimes is off the mark. That if it's a huge movie, you'd have no idea how much money is going into the marketing.
Be astronomical.
And then the theaters have a cut too. So it's like you think about how much actually has to be made for that profit. And so a $300 million Christopher Nolan movie sounds like a choice that Seth Rogen's character on The Studio would definitely make. But it also sounds like the kind of thing that could make you sink or swim as a medium-sized studio, because you are counting on that movie, like whatever the cultural capital is that Christopher Nolan or someone like that brings, like the integrity signing aspect of having a guy like that, then is offset by, well, then he has even said he's not going to make a small movie at this point. Like he feels that he can get giant movies made, and like the pressure is on him to make movies that rise to that occasion. So I don't even know if he could make a $50 million movie, or if he would ever want to. Yeah.
Get your head out your ass, man. Make a $10 million movie.
Well, I mean, it would be cool to see, but I guess what I'm saying is I also understand the notion of, okay, if I'm a guy that can get something shot on IMAX and spend all this money and do all this crazy stuff, I want to do it. But it is, at a certain point, what you're saying, Ronald, it is this lurking idea of like, what are we really doing here, though, if you're like risking the whole studio on a project with the idea that like a guy like that who's like, He's theatrical is what he's going for. And again, we love it. We love a Christopher Nolan who wants to bring you into the theater and give you some experience you can't have otherwise. Yeah. So it's so many competing thoughts. But when you hear about that much money being spent on a movie, and like the biggest one recently that blew my mind was the $320 million on Electric State, the Russo brothers movie for Netflix. The fact that you hear like David Lynch dies, and one of the stories that comes out is he was trying to get a project going at Netflix that he wanted like a few million for, and they couldn't open the checkbook for him. But they've given the Russo brothers 320 to do Electric State, which is a movie that a week after it came out didn't exist for most viewers. Like people don't talk about that movie. I don't think it's hated, but it definitely has kind of gone down a memory hole. And that's not what you want when you spend that kind of money on a movie. Yeah. I really loved Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, but they spent $350 million on that movie. That should have been a $150 million movie or something. It would have been successful at that rate. Even, Solo, a famous failure, was another one that they shot twice. So it's like, these are not bad movies necessarily. It's the fact that that they don't seem to realize that they can't just keep that. It's what you were saying, Ronald. They just can't keep acting like they can print money on these things, and that it's not a system, that there's a certain amount of like the stars have to align to get the audiences out. And then you see something like Sinners, and even though that was heavily marketed, that's a movie that has a real organic swell of people behind it, and it's a huge hit because of how good it is, or because people walk out saying you got to see this. It's not because of all these other factors. So
100%. Like I just want to get back to just enjoying movies without all that weird context to it. It just it muddies it up for me. I'm like overthinking watching a fucking movie. I'm like, man, is this third act strong enough to fucking bring? It's like, god damn. Like, but it's cool that we can even talk about this stuff and people are listening to us. So I'm very appreciative of that, and I'm very appreciative that we get opportunities to see these movies. Sometimes for free. This is a super duper privilege. So
if you're listening, I hope you know that occasionally we get to see a free movie.
Yeah, occasionally.
You're part of the empire that we've built.
Yeah. That's all I want, man. Some free movies and some popcorn from time to time.
You get popcorn.
Yeah.
Is that sent by A24?
Gang, gang.
Gang popcorn.
Gang, gang. They said,
It's branded as
you're
such.
just sitting in the theater and someone says gang, gang in your ear and they hand you popcorn.
Yes. Also, A24 logo T-shirt. Gang, gang.
Well, I've mentioned it a couple times. It came up. Have we all seen Thunderbolts?
I have not.
Oh, you have not. Ronald, you saw it.
Yes, I saw it twice.
Okay.
Wow. What'd you
As
guys
have
think?
I. As have I. So there's a mark of something for you. We've both seen it twice. I really enjoyed the shit out of this movie. Like I kind of love it. Like I think
That's
it's
great.
it gave me like. My son is hard to impress. He's a jaded 17-year-old. He has not watched Brave New World yet, and he and his mom. I don't know that they will unless I make them sit down and watch it. And I don't really care enough to do that. On the way to see the Thunderbolts, I told them like the two things I think they needed to know from Brave New World, which is
Right.
Bucky is running for congressman in that film, and there's some question of who will take on the mantle of forming the new Avengers team, and Sam Wilson does not necessarily jump at the chance to form a new
right.
Avengers team. And those are like the only two details, really. Would you agree, Ronald, that when you go into Thunderbolts, those are the only two, like, people talk about all the things they need to know. I mean, it does help if you've seen Black Widow, for sure. It helps if you understand the relationship between Bucky and John Walker, which is so funny that I'm talking about myself in third person. Around the time, I just have to accept that anytime Wyatt Russell's character in the MCU, whose name is John Walker, that anytime he's in a movie or a Marvel project, I'm going to have to accept that for a few weeks, the internet is a very toxic place for me because it's full of tweets that just say things like John Walker is a fucking asshole and I don't care. They did nothing to redeem him. I've heard people say that he's a redeemable character. I just saw the movie and I don't agree. John Walker can go kick rocks. But that's the meanest thing they've said, Ronald, is that I can go kick rocks.
That's not bad.
No, I can kick rocks. I can kick them really far. No, but no, it's just that these are all like characters that you could have the background for, but I think the movie does a great job of bringing you in and setting up the idea. It's different from Suicide Squad. It's different from Guardians. It's got little elements of both Guardians of the Galaxy and Suicide Squad, so you're getting a little bit of a James Gunn kind of vibe, but it feels like all along Marvel has been learning the wrong lesson from Guardians of the Galaxy, which is we got to make these movies funny. And this is like one of the first ones that feels like it's learning the right lesson from Guardians of the Galaxy, which is that James Gunn puts messy humanity on display and lets damaged characters like bounce off of each other and be there for each other. And I think that's what is special about Thunderbolts is my son, who could say any number of things, walked out and said, "Oh, that movie had such great awareness of like mental illness and depression and stuff." And I was like, wow. I was agreeing with that, but I was really impressed to hear that even to him, he was impressed at how the movie dealt with those elements. And I think that like it was like the first time in a while that we've seen one of these movies, and all three of us, he and his mom and I, were just talking about the characters and the way they react and what would this person do about this. And it's that old Marvel feeling, but it's also not quite the old Marvel feeling because this is different. And this is, don't you think, Ronald, like a moodier film, and it's allowed to be its own thing in its own movie in a way that these movies are not always allowed to be.
This is a true story of four strangers picked to live in a house, work together, and have their lives taped to find out what happens when people stop being polite and start being real. I bullshit you not. That's what I thought about when I was watching this movie. You know what? It's like, Steve, it's like, have you seen it yet?
No, I have not.
He said no.
Okay,
Yeah.
think about it like this. If a group of misfits really were misfits, and if they really doubted being in a group together, this is what that movie would be. And I'm not talking about like they tell you they're misfits. They're like really in shitty situations that they really show in a cool way. And I thought at first when they were tackling all this stuff that it would be corny because I'd heard people say like they tackle mental health in a very shallow. No, it's done in a way that I think is a little more subtle than they're giving it credit for. Because when you're trying to accomplish a task that doesn't work out, it's not like you're like, I'm a terrible person. It's like, oh, I'm not that good at this. I'm ugly and stupid and fat, and it just keeps. There's like this element of that way. It's like the depression becomes heavier and heavier as the movie goes on.
Yeah.
The doubt becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's like a real. I mean, I guess, and that's why I don't like elevator pitches anymore. Like it feels like it misses the nuance of some of the stuff. It really is a superhero movie like Suicide Squad, sure, but it really has a lot of like nuance to really doubting yourself. It's the shittiest, meanest version of the Wizard of Oz that I've ever seen in my life, in a cool way.
Well, the way that's a fun comparison because characters really do sort of discover what their missing pieces as they go along. And I like how like Yelena she's fucked up over what she's done, and Florence Pugh is like I heard someone say she's the biggest star in the MCU right now, and I was like, that might be a little premature, but I know why someone would say that. She's that kind of actor who can make a movie just to completely pop. Yeah. And this feels like something that like, okay, they need to do what they can to secure her for a few more movies or something because she's just got that energy. She's got that like that vibe. She can carry a film. David Harbour is so funny and so good, and like they found a way to a character that's like a one-liner machine, but there's such pathos connected to his one-liners. His humor comes from like he really is a character who's in a lot of pain, and he hides it by being like the big guy, but his dream of like being a hero feels so sincere that you buy into it. And they have a great kind of father-daughter scene too at one moment that is the one that we were talking about, and really like almost every line from it is just beautifully written, but it makes you feel like there's something soulful about it. It's not like you said, Ronald, it's not the kind of off-the-rack version of, oh, these characters are fucked up or these characters are edgy. And even John Walker, the way he comes in, he's like, he's not like, we know that he's beaten down because we see him alone at some point doom scrolling, looking at terrible headlines about himself.
Yeah, for sure.
But when he comes into the situation, Ronald, didn't you love that Wyatt Russell played him not like he's saying, yeah, I know everyone hates me, but he comes in like, I was fucking Captain America. What were you? You know what I mean? That. Like his attitude is like, why don't people love me? Not like, oh, I suck. And I think that's a funny vibe because there's moments where through the cracks you see how wounded he is, but that character doesn't do anything to make you want to warm up to him at all. The only thing you notice is he does sort of get into saving people, and when he needs to be there for this team, there's this like development in the sense of like, does he play well with others? And there's something poignant about watching a guy like that like overcome his own nature to be like part of something. And I think that like every character has their own little. Ghost is a little bit less developed than those other ones I just mentioned. And we won't talk about Taskmaster, but like the main three on the team are characters that feel like the actors are having a lot of fun and they're reasonably fleshed out characters. And I didn't really talk about Bob. I guess he's really kind of the second main character in this, and he's fantastic.
I'm so glad you said that, John, because there's a big elephant in the room that I have to address. I can't help but wonder.
Yeah.
What this character would have been like if Stephen Yeun was Sentry. I can't help it.
Can I tell you? I've pictured it, and I don't think he would have been as good as.
I was going to say something. I was going to say.
Oh, okay.
If you're doubting it, Bob has a take. I mean, and part of me thinks that maybe Stephen Yeun's take might have been a little different.
Right. He would have almost had to have been a more sarcastic kind of knowing guy. I don't think Stephen Yeun could have played deer in headlights. That's the only reason I said that, is I think Bob, the way that he's such a blank slate as a character, Lewis Pullman really pulled something off, no pun intended. But I think Stephen Yeun would have, it's almost like I would have been thinking about Invincible the whole time. And I hate to say that because I love Stephen Yeun. And I don't think I would have, if he had been in it, I don't think I would have had any complaints. I think he would have been great. But it's hard for me to wish for anything different from this kind of innocence that Lewis Pullman was able to play. And I just don't know that Stephen Yeun, I know him, he seems really smart. And I don't know that I've ever seen him play that kind of innocence that Bob has in this. Yeah. But it's a great character, isn't it?
Great character, man. And almost doesn't feel, and maybe that's what makes this one feel weird, because Sentry isn't a very, I mean, I've never seen Sentry on TV. I
I
may
don't
have
think
seen him
Sentry's
in.
actually that good of a character, but I think he's
No,
brilliant for
no,
the
no.
movies. It's the case of them taking something from the comics that is okay and making it into a really cool movie element. Even the way
Yes,
they visualized him is just really simple and really great.
yeah, and I think that's what's going to be different about this one too. Like I think people are used to a basket of maybe 15 characters that they know. This is really trying to introduce somebody you've never seen on screen in that way. You may have heard of them, but never on screen, and it does it in a cool way. It makes you feel like this is the first movie that I've watched in the MCU where I felt like, oh, I don't know everybody in this circle. This is
Yeah.
expanding it. And I think this is their way in to make this whole next phase work. I think the key is unpredictability, offbeat kind of movies, and kind of hitting you from an angle that you aren't really used to. I wasn't expecting them to tackle fucking mental health in this movie. It's like it's a cool angle. It's an angle that I haven't seen done in this way. I'm thinking, especially as the next couple movies come out, I'm wondering if that's what's going to be kind of the pull now. It's like these genre movies that happen to be in this universe that'll eventually become connected, which is what I've been kind of waiting for.
Well, they've always said that, and the best
Yeah,
ones they've
yeah.
done have been some version of that. Like Winter
Yeah.
Soldier was kind of a little bit more of a political thriller, even though
Yeah,
it's
for
not
sure.
fully. And I do think Guardians of the Galaxy is like, now we've seen new Star Wars, so it doesn't seem as unique. But like at the time that movie came out, it was like a space opera in the way that Star Wars was. So I do think they've done that. I don't think they've done that every movie, and I don't think we can necessarily expect that from the next Avengers movie because that's going to be so huge. But Fantastic Four
Right.
does seem like a movie that it's got its own little feel. So we'll
Yeah.
see what that makes us think about. But I'm excited about this next little wave now that we've seen this, because
too.
this really does. I've heard this is like the first movie that was made after they knew they needed to slow it down. Like Brave New World was the last movie they finished that was part of the earlier stage of development. This is the first movie that was finished with them knowing we're going for quality over quantity, and we're trying to really make it special. And I think you can tell. I mean, I know I've heard that, and so it's kind of what you were saying, Ronald. So much inside baseball. It's inside baseball. Baseball, that's what I was trying to say.
Baseball.
But inside baseball, where it's like, okay, maybe I know too much about the studio's woes, but I think you can feel a palpable difference in the feel, the storytelling, the confidence, the whatever, going from Brave New World into Thunderbolts. It just has the distinct sense of being a little bit more of a movie. And I think Jake Schreier, if I'm saying that right, the director, rumors that he might be getting tapped to take on the X-Men for Marvel, to me feels like the right kind of ascension, because if anything, the X-Men are totally about like nailing that emotional part of the characters and the sort of tortured part of the characters, and I feel like this shows that he can handle that.
Sure.
But I would also love to see Thunderbolts too, frankly. Like this is one of those things where it's like the Guardians. I want these characters to exist. I know they're going to be part of Avengers. I hope they're not cannon fodder in the next Avengers movie. I hope they don't think of them as the second string team that we can wipe out to show how cool Doctor Doom is or something like that.
Dr. Doom just starts tearing them apart like pieces of paper.
I don't want to see that. I don't think they'll do
paper.
that. I don't think they spend a whole movie showing us how they deal with their trauma only to make them into a joke. But the Russos have kind of done that before with an Avengers movie. Like the Guardians that show up in the Infinity War and Endgame are not as soulful as the Guardians in their own movies. So we'll just have to see. And Steve, I think you would dig it. I feel like we've maybe overhyped it, but I hope what you're getting from this is that like we enjoyed the shit out of this movie, and that makes it feel really special in this vein. But I don't want you. I want you to kind of go in like thinking like, this is a fun action movie, and then I think you'll be surprised. And I don't know how much you know about the plot, but the way the characters come together and the way they end up teaming up, I really liked all that stuff. I loved the plot mechanics of how they were brought together, and that wasn't totally spoiled for me by the marketing. So even though certain things have been spoiled by the marketing since this movie came out, I guess we should mention that a little bit. The fact that they've spoiled the end of the movie in the marketing. And I know a lot of people say it's not really that much of a spoiler, and I sort of agree, but in another way, the fun of wondering when they might reveal that is part of the fun of the movie. And so I do feel like that dampens a little bit of the fun. Don't you think, Ronald, to know in advance?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially if you see how they found out everything, it makes it that much more exciting. It's like That's the unfortunate part about it. It's robbing people. Again, this is what spoilers are. For anybody listening, what spoilers do is rob people of the experience of enjoying it the way that you did. The way you frantically
The
tell
way
somebody
that
something.
you did. That's the important part. You
Yeah.
went to see it. You saw it. You got
Yes.
to see it in the theater. Then you
Yes,
turn around
you
and ruin
enjoyed
it for somebody else.
Yes. So you frantically tell another person because you want them to feel that feeling that you had. But you have to understand something, asshole. You can't recreate it that way. They have to be in the theater to watch it with you. You telling them isn't going to make them excited.
But, and if you don't know what we're talking about, I guess you're lucky. You don't know what we're talking about. But the name of the movie has been altered. I don't even know if it's really been altered or if it's just the poster, because it still is listed under the original title. But something that's been speculated about this movie since it got announced, basically, has been kind of ruined by the way they've approached the marketing. And I was shocked that the movie was only out like 3 days when they started doing that.
So they are at some theaters, because the first time I saw it, it had it as Thunderbolts. Yeah, it had a.
How do you spell that?
I don't know, ZRG. Yeah, but it had it. It had it in the name of the ticket. So I'm like, I have a ticket around here somewhere.
Oh wow!
With the colon.
Asterisk or
colon.
Oh, it has a colon on it.
Yeah,
now?
it has a colon. Isn't that weird?
They took away the asterisk and they put in a colon.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing, when the movie title got changed to that name with the asterisk,
yeah,
there were people who started speculating at that moment that that's
instantly.
what the asterisk meant.
They shouldn't have did that. I maybe they shouldn't have
I like it.
started
I like it. I think it's fun. I think the asterisk is fun. I think changing the name of the movie and the marketing 3 days after it comes out feels weird. It feels like a sweaty move, you know? Like they're afraid you won't know and therefore you won't be brought in unless you have that team name out there. But anyway, it's still a good movie, Steve. But yes, that is a shocking choice for the marketing.
Yeah. Whatever you
But a
gotta
colon,
do.
a full-on colon. Jeez.
Full-on colon. Yeah. Because they're full of shit for doing this to us. That's a colon.
Oh.
All right.
Well, that feels like a show, even though we've watched a few other things, I'm sure. Does anybody else have anything else they want to mention? I mean, Andor was fantastic, and that ended this week, and I've watched all of it, and I would watch it all again right now. I love it so much. But maybe we'll talk about that in the future.
Is it over? Or?
Yeah, it's over.
Like the fourth week, which was 3 episodes a week. Yeah, it just came out. But I mean, like, it does the thing you would think it did, which is like lead into Rogue One very nicely.
Oh,
cool.
What's funny about it, though, and this doesn't spoil anything, is knowing that it leads into Rogue One very nicely. And then Rogue One, as we know, leads into A New Hope. Very nicely or not, depending on how you like that. I don't like CGI Carrie Fisher, but otherwise I like the end of that movie. Then, like, Star Wars happens. So when you get to the end of Andor and you see what the rebellion has gone through and how they've formed and what these people who are in this rebel base, what they've been through and the way they've come together and what the odds against them, and you fathom that in a couple days the princess is going to show up with a farm boy and like a smuggler who doesn't want to be there and a big dog and 2 sassy droids. And they're going to be the hotshots who save the day, and they're going to get medals. Trying to picture the characters at the end of Andor, which is literally like a few days or a week or something before the events of Star Wars. Like, it's weird to picture that group of people is going to be like, going, okay, I guess this farm kid who shot the gun, like, it's hard to picture. Like, otherwise it almost it doesn't ruin the original trilogy, it sets it up. It's a funny thing to picture that the characters we've been loving all these years are these sort of characters who come in from the side and aren't part of the building of this rebellion and aren't part of all the espionage. Again, I don't, the story of Andor is a fun thing to discover. So, but it all is leading up to that. And so it's just kind of an interesting thing that it does. It really makes it seem like our favorite characters for generations are these kind of Johnny-come-latelys who show up at the last minute to save the day. Like, I used to shoot womp rats at home, like all the stuff that Luke says. It seems like it would be infuriating to every character on Andor.
I feel like there was one thing I was going to... Oh, I watched the new season of Black Mirror. That's what I was...
Okay.
when I was on the plane flight last week, which I thought was
How does
great.
it stack
Actually,
up? How does it stack up
I thought it was
to
great.
Black Mirror's
Honestly,
past? Okay.
I mean, I think it definitely was like it felt a little more in line with maybe earlier seasons. I don't know, just like in terms of the consistency, like in terms of I don't think there was like a really straight up weak episode or story, but a couple of them were like really great. There's one with Paul Giamatti in it that was I thought was really good. Um, where he's like called by basically like an AI agent to collect memories for a funeral from a woman that he had dated in the past. And it's
Oh.
like the way they can like travel. Of course, there's a thing you put on your head, and you like you can like look into a picture that you have and like experience the photo to
Mm.
try to remember more about this person because it's so long ago, and it's like kind of explores like repressed memories and like things you don't want to actually admit that you did wrong, and like you're coming to
Mm.
realize you maybe were the reason it didn't work. It was just a really that one really stood out to me. And there's a sequel to the USS Callister episode, which is awesome. That's an all timer, and this is a pretty great follow up to that too. So yeah, definitely. I mean, I love Black Mirror all around. Like I don't really kind of fall. I don't really kind of feel like it kind of dropped off as much as a lot of people do. But I just find all the little like standalone episodes so interesting. And just who they get to play in these shows. The episodes are just it's always nice to see who pops up. But I hope they keep making them. I hope they maybe don't have whatever the 3-4 years in between them.
Has it been that long? Wow. Yeah.
Or it's something like that. It's been a while.
Didn't they take Bandersnatch off Netflix?
They did, yeah.
Which
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care so much about any individual thing that might get taken off of a service, but I feel like it's weird to take off. It's weird to make something almost unavailable completely. I mean, I guess at this point, unless you're pirating it, you don't have access to something that existed only on a streaming platform. Or did it come out physically or something? I don't know. Anyway.
I don't really know, but yeah, I saw a lot of people kind of commenting that same point that you just said, like,
how hard is it just to leave it on whatever server it's on,
Did
I don't
people
know.
watch it the regular way, or people did the interactive part? Like,
I if it exists anywhere, I guess it's like one of the linear stories. Like it's just the narrative piece. I don't know if the choose your own adventure part would still be in it. And actually, one of the episodes is a kind of a follow up to that episode.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow.
Well, at least one of the characters from that episode appears in one of the episodes this season. Yeah, it's the what's his name? Will Poulter.
Will Poulter. Yeah, I was about to say.
Yeah.
I think I saw him in a picture.
Yeah. Oh, also Will Poulter. I saw Death of a Unicorn.
Oh, okay.
I finally watched that. That was a lot of fun.
Okay. Yeah, I intend to see that.
Yeah, he's probably he pretty much steals that movie, I think, among people like Paul Rudd and Richard Grant and Tay Leone. That was. I feel like the kind of that dark comedy horror gets gory at times, but is kind of fun enough.
Mm-hmm.
One guy from Barry is in it. What's his name? The bald dude.
Yeah, he's in Superman too.
Right. Yes, I was gonna say. I think he pops. He was in the new Superman. But I thought it was pretty good, actually. Like I watched it again, also on the plane ride home.
Anthony Carrigan.
Carrigan, that's right.
He was NoHo.
Smaller
Hank.
role, but he has a couple really great scenes in it. But just absurdist, like this eat the rich, let the unicorns take their revenge. On these, just horrible people. But then you have Paul Rudd and Jenna Ortega kind of mixed up in it. But I'm glad I finally got to watch that. But yeah, so I went for the Will Poulter hat trick. I tried to watch Warfare before we recorded, but I didn't make it to it. That's on my list to watch while I'm maybe on vacation. But that's all I got, man. I think that wraps it up.
Cool.
So yeah, Fight or Flight is my pick. Again, it's in theaters. I think it may be available on some digital platforms. I think it had like some international release, but and also I guess next week when we record, John and Rana will have seen the new Mission Impossible film.
Yes,
hopefully. As long as they play this one. I was going to say, remember the last time we went to see it and they didn't play it?
That's right.
Man, I forgot about that.
Yeah, I'm like, fingers crossed for you guys that they don't have a print problem with this one.
Yeah, Steve supposedly won't be there, but we are prepared to believe that Steve will be there in disguise. And at some point, we'll whip off a mask.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm looking for like whoever is the least like Steve. You know what I mean? Like that's what you got to look for. Is like who's got the least Steve-like energy. Ronald, we should sit on either side of them and stare at them through the whole movie.
Look what the.
Well, like you said, John, you'll know if it's me if I'm up on my elbows on my knees.
You won't be able to hide it.
Yeah.
No, that feels wrong that you won't be there. But at least you know.
It broke my heart when I saw the invite, and I was like, of course, it's the night I come back from vacation and just won't be back early enough.
Well, that was me when I realized that Sinners was off the map for me. So yeah, I know that feeling. We just gotta roll on ahead. But it is odd when it's when the biggest Tom Cruise fan on the show is not going to be there. But we love him. We love him well enough. Outside of his dubious ties to a possible, dangerous
minor
cult.
details. Minor details, John. Cool. All right, moviesmovie.com is the website. You can go there to subscribe to the podcast on the audio platform of your choice. You can listen to it right there on the site also if you like. youtube.com/moviesmovie podcast if you want the visual option, and or also audio is available there as well. We also have the shorts on the YouTube channel. If you could go to any of those places, subscribe, comment, share it, whatever you could do to get the word out, we would appreciate it greatly. And we'll check in next week with you. Again, Fight or Flight is the pick for required viewing, and look forward to hearing John and Ronald talk about Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Thank you so much for listening. And as always, you made our day. Thanks.
Bye.